in the vast emptiness of the Orion-Cygnus Arm, approximately 37 light-years from the nearest friendly port. But the human cargo vessel, the Desperate Measures, drifted through space like a metallic whale with indigestion. The ship wasn't actually desperate when it was christened. It was named after its first captain's favorite dive bar back on Mars colony. Now, though, the name had taken on a prophetic quality. Commander Eliza Donovan stood on the bridge, drumming her fingers against the captain's chair. Her red hair was pulled back in a practical bun that had started the day neat, but now resembled something closer to a quantum physics experiment gone wrong. The dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't seen proper sleep in about 3 standard days. Status report, she barked, though everyone on the bridge already knew what the report would say. Lieutenant Quinn, the ship's operations officer, cleared his throat. Food supplies at 12%. Water recycling at 97% efficiency, but filtration components are degrading. Fuel cells at 22%. Medical supplies. He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Let me guess, Liz said. We're one paper cut away from using adhesive tape as bandages. That would be an optimistic assessment, Captain, came the calm voice of Dr. Patel, the ship's chief medical officer. She stood at the entrance to the bridge, datapad in hand, looking as impeccably put together as always despite the circumstances. We're down to 3 pain relievers and something that might be antibiotic ointment, but could also be Engineer Ortega's lunch from last week. From the engineering console, Max Ortega shot the doctor a wounded look. Hey, my mysterious biological experiments stay in engineering where they belong. Dax Williams, head of security and former Earth military, laughed from his station. Is that why the air filters on Deck 3 smell like cheese? To focus, people, Liz interrupted, though a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. This was her crew, 7 humans and 1 very confused maintenance bot named Spanner, who had developed what the ship's AI specialist Riley Thompson called personality quirks, and what everyone else called a concerning habit of hiding in cupboards. The good humor was short-lived as the ship's proximity alert blared. Unknown vessel approaching from bearing 347, called out Quinn, hands flying over his console. Configuration unknown. But it's big, really big. Big. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a ship that resembled nothing so much as a geometric nightmare. All sharp angles and protruding antennas, it gleamed with a dull purple-grey metallic shine that somehow managed to look both advanced and deeply unpleasant. Receiving transmission, Quinn said. Put it through, Liz ordered, straightening her rumpled uniform jacket. The screen changed to reveal what appeared to be a face, though it took a moment to register as such. The being had grey-violet skin stretched over a skull-like face with no visible nose, just 2 breathing slits. Its eyes were large, perfectly circular, and an unsettling shade of yellow with rectangular pupils. When it spoke, its thin-lipped mouth barely moved, revealing teeth that looked more like a uniform ridge of bone. Attention, human vessel. This is Senior Inspector Valzik of the Vex'tari Customs Authority. You have entered regulated space. Prepare to be scanned and possibly boarded. Liz stepped forward. This is Commander Eliza Donovan of the Earth merchant fleet vessel, the Desperate Measures. We're on a registered trade route and experiencing supply shortages. We've been broadcasting distress signals for. Irrelevant. The Vex'tari cut in. All vessels in Vex'tari space must submit to inspection. Your distress signal has been logged and will be addressed after completion of standard procedures. Dr. Patel leaned toward Liz and whispered, Vex'tari. I've heard stories. They're obsessed with rules and regulations, no flexibility whatsoever. And absolutely no sense of humor, added Riley, who had appeared at Liz's other side. They evolved from hive-dwelling creatures. Their whole society is built on order and process. Liz sighed. Inspector Valzik, we're in an emergency situation. Our supplies. It will be verified during inspection. Valzik finished. To prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in immediate confiscation of your vessel. Compliance is mandatory. The transmission cut off. Liz turned to her crew, all of whom wore expressions ranging from concern to outright alarm. Well, enter we, she said with forced cheer. Looks like we're about to have visitors. Quinn, make sure our distress beacon is broadcasting on all frequencies. Riley, pull up everything we have on Vex'tari Customs procedures. Vex, make sure Spanner isn't hiding in the galley cupboards again. Last thing we need is for these rule lovers to think we have a stowaway bot. As the crew scrambled to prepare, Liz stared at the approaching vessel with a growing sense of foreboding. In her 10 years captaining cargo ships through the galaxy, she'd learned one universal truth: bureaucrats were the same everywhere, even when they had breathing slits instead of noses. And bureaucrats with power were the worst kind of trouble. The massive Vex'tari ship loomed closer, casting their smaller vessel in shadow. A secondary alert sounded as a smaller shuttle detached from the larger ship and approached their docking bay. Docking procedure initiated, Quinn reported. They're not waiting for permission. Of course they're not, Liz muttered. She tapped her con. All hands, prepare for boarding inspection. Remember, we're just honest merchants down on our luck. Let's not give them any reason to make our day worse. As the Vex'tari shuttle locked onto their docking port with mechanical precision, Liz had no idea how much worse things were about to get. Section 2. The Customs Nightmare. The airlock cycled with an ominous hiss, and the inner door slid open to reveal what could only be described as a purple nightmare in uniform. 3 Vex'tari officials stood in rigid formation, each wearing identical charcoal grey suits with purple piping that matched their skin tone. The effect was disconcerting, like someone had decided to dress up statues and then given them clipboards. The tallest Vex'tari stepped forward. Unlike the others, his uniform bore additional insignia, small geometric shapes that probably denoted rank, but looked more like someone had played a drunken game of Tetris on his chest. "I am Inspector Crone," he announced, his voice a monotone that could put caffeine to sleep. "These are my associates, Deputy Inspectors Mick and Knack." The 2 deputies nodded in perfect unison, their rectangular pupils contracting slightly under the ship's lights. Liz offered her most diplomatic smile. "Welcome aboard the Desperate Measures. I'm Commander Donovan. We appreciate your quick response to our distress signal." "This is not a response to your distress signal," Crone corrected, consulting a thin, transparent device that resembled a clipboard made of light. "This is a standard customs inspection as required by Statute 7293B of the Vex'tari Space Navigation Code." "Right," Liz said, her smile straining. "But as I mentioned in our communication, we're critically low on supplies. We'd been en route from the Centauri outpost when our navigation system malfunctioned, sending us off course and—" "Irrelevant at this time," Crone interrupted, making a notation on his light board. "Supply verification is step 17 of the inspection process. We are currently at step 1, crew identification and manifest verification." Deputy Inspector Mick produced a similar device and began scanning each crew member present. "Please state your full name, position, and planet of origin when scanned," instructed Deputy Inspector Naki, whose voice was identical to Crone's but somehow even more devoid of inflection. Dr. Patel, who had joined Liz at the airlock, leaned in to whisper, "Captain, our medical supplies won't last another day if we have to go through their full protocol." "Inspector," Liz tried again, "I understand procedures are important, but we have a genuine emergency situation. Perhaps we could expedite." Expedited processing requires Form 8856CC submitted in triplicate to the Vex'tari Central Processing Authority, no less than 7 standard cycles. Before encounter, Crone stated without looking up, "You failed to submit such forms." "Because we didn't know we'd be drifting into your space after a navigation failure," Liz explained, feeling her diplomatic reserves depleting rapidly. Crone's rectangular pupils dilated slightly in what might have been surprise or possibly indigestion. "Unplanned encounters require Form 8856C2, which I can provide. It must be completed, notarized by a Vex'tari official of Class 3 rank or higher, submitted for review, and approved before expedited processing can be considered." "And how long does that take?" Liz asked. 7 to 9 standard cycles," replied Mick helpfully. Liz pinched the bridge of her nose. We'll stick with the regular inspection. For the next 2 hours, the Vex'tari meticulously documented every aspect of the ship, from the registration numbers on the hull plates to the manufacturing dates on the recycled air filters. They counted crew members, catalogued personal possessions, and at one point Deputy Inspector Nack spent 15 minutes examining Spanner, who had been discovered hiding in a supply closet. This maintenance unit is not listed on your manifest, Nack glared. Spanner came with the ship, Max explained, patting the bot's cylindrical head. He's practically part of the hull at this point. Unlisted equipment constitutes a violation of Statute 4588D, said Kron, making another notation. A fine will be assessed. A fine? Liz repeated incredulously. And for a maintenance bot that's older than most of my crew? Age of violation does not negate violation, Kron responded, then turned to his deputies. Proceed to step 9, galley inspection. Riley Thompson, who had been silently observing the proceedings with growing alarm, caught Liz's eye and mouthed a single word, coffee. Liz's eyes widened. The coffee, the real Earth coffee that they'd picked up in the Centauri outpost, a luxury item that was technically restricted in several sectors due to its stimulant properties. They'd never declared it because, well, coffee wasn't illegal in human space, and they hadn't planned on entering Vex'tari territory. Inspector, Liz said quickly, perhaps we could skip ahead to the supply verification. As I've mentioned several times, we're in an emergency situation. But Kron was already moving toward the galley, his deputies following in perfect step behind him. Liz exchanged glances with her crew and hurried after them. The galley inspection was as thorough as everything else. Every container was opened, every package scanned, every nutrition bar unwrapped, and then clumsily re-wrapped by Deputy Mick, who appeared to have never encountered the concept of a wrapper before. And then Inspector Kron opened the cabinet above the beverage synthesizer. What, he said, holding up a vacuum-sealed package of dark beans, is this substance? That's coffee, Liz admitted. It's a traditional Earth beverage. Kron scanned the package, and his light board emitted a sharp beep. This substance is classified as a restricted stimulant under Vex'tari Regulation 3355J. It contains chemicals that can alter mental states. It helps us stay alert during long shifts, Riley explained. It's perfectly safe for human consumption. Legality is not determined by safety, but by regulation, Kron stated. The possession of restricted substances constitutes a Class 2 violation. What exactly does a Class 2 violation entail? Liz asked warily. Detention of vessel and crew pending full investigation, answered Deputy Nackay. All cargo and supplies to be held as potential evidence. Our supplies? Dr. Patel stepped forward. Inspector. That's exactly what we've been trying to tell you. We're already critically low. If you confiscate what little we have left. Regulations do not permit exceptions based on quantity, Kron said. He handed his light board to Deputy Mick and tapped his wrist device. Senior Inspector Valzik, we have discovered restricted substances aboard the human vessel. Implementing Protocol 47, full impound and evidence collection. Wait, Liz protested. You can't take our supplies. We won't survive long enough for your investigation. Survival concerns should have been considered before violation of regulations, Kron replied. Your vessel will be towed to Outpost Vex-12 for processing. All supplies will be catalogued as evidence and stored according to procedure. This is insane, Max exclaimed. You're basically condemning us to starve because we have coffee. Kron's expression remained unchanged. Emotional appeals are noted but irrelevant to procedural requirements. Within minutes, more Vex'tari officials boarded the ship. They began methodically confiscating everything edible, potable, and medically useful, placing items in sealed containers labeled evidence. As Liz watched their last protein packs disappear into a Vex'tari evidence crate, she felt a cold anger settling in her chest. The kind of anger that had propelled humanity from one small blue planet to become a force throughout the galaxy. Inspector Kron, she said, her voice deadly calm. I want it on record that I've informed you of our emergency situation no less than 7 times, and that by confiscating our supplies, you're putting my crew in danger." "Your statement has been recorded," Crone replied indifferently. "You will be provided with standard detention rations once processing at Outpost Vex-12 is complete." "And how long will that take?" "Given current processing volumes and the complexity of your violations, approximately 3 to 5 standard cycles." Dr. Patel stepped forward. "We don't have 3 days. Some of us are already showing signs of dehydration. Medical emergencies can be addressed through Form 9033N once we reach the outpost," said Deputy Mick. As the desperate measures were secured for towing, Liz gathered her increasingly agitated crew in the now empty galley. "We're not going to panic," she told them quietly. "We've been in tight spots before." "Not this tight," muttered Quinn. "And not with purple bureaucrats who'd let us die of thirst while they fill out forms about it." "There's an old saying on Earth," Liz said, looking each crew member in the eye, "never get between a human and their next meal." Dax Williams, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the inspection, nodded grimly. "The Vex'tari are about to learn why that saying exists." Section 3. Detention and Desperate Planning. Outpost Vex-12 looked like what would happen if someone designed a space station using only a ruler and a profound hatred of curves. Every surface was flat, every angle precise. The entire structure rotated with mathematical perfection, creating artificial gravity through centrifugal force that was exactly 1.02 Earth standard, just uncomfortable enough to remind visitors they weren't home. The desperate measures had been docked in a high-security bay, its systems locked down under Vex'tari control codes. The crew had been accommodated. In a detention block that was technically not a prison, the Vex'tari were very clear about this distinction but featured locked doors, constant surveillance, and bunks that appeared to have been designed by someone who'd heard of sleep but considered it an inefficient use of time. 48 hours into their detention, the crew of the desperate measures had collectively reached what Riley Thompson eloquently described as the stage where murder seems like a reasonable problem-solving technique. Liz paced the common area of their detention block, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her stomach. The standard detention rations, promised by Inspector Crone, had materialized exactly once small cubes of a substance that tasted like someone had described food to an artificial intelligence that had never seen, smelled, or eaten anything in its existence. And the portions were insultingly small, clearly calculated for the Vex'tari metabolism rather than human nutritional needs. "If I have to eat one more purple food cube, I'm going to start gnawing on the furniture," Max declared, sprawled dramatically across one of the angular seating units. "I wouldn't," Dr. Patel advised from her perch near the room's only window. "The composition looks polymer-based. You'd probably hallucinate for hours before your stomach ruptured." At this point, "That sounds like entertainment," Quinn muttered. The door to their common area slid open with a precise hiss, revealing 2 Vex'tari guards flanking a taller, more elaborately decorated official. Unlike the uniformed inspectors, this Vex'tari wore flowing robes in deep purple with geometric patterns that shifted subtly as they moved. "I am Grand Arbiter Newell Vex," the robed figure announced without preamble. "I oversee all legal proceedings at this outpost." Liz stepped forward. "Commander Eliza Donovan, these are my crew. We've been detained here for 2 days with inadequate rations and no information about when our case will be reviewed." Newell Vex consulted a light tablet similar to Crone's but larger and with more complex displays. "Your case file indicates possession of restricted stimulants, operation of undocumented equipment, and 17 minor navigational violations." "We had coffee," Liz clarified, "and a maintenance bot that's been with the ship longer than I have. The navigational violations occurred because our system malfunctioned and we drifted into your space while broadcasting distress signals. Intentionality does not alter classification of violation," Newell Vex stated in what was becoming a frustratingly familiar Vex'tari refrain. Riley Thompson stepped forward. Before joining the desperate measures, they had worked in diplomatic services and had a knack for negotiation that had talked the crew out of numerous tight spots in the past. "And Arbiter," Riley began, their voice modulated to convey respect. We understand and appreciate the Vex'tari commitment to order and procedure. What concerns us is the humanitarian aspect of our situation. Our species requires more substantial nutrition than what has been provided, and several crew members are showing signs of physical distress. Null Vex's rectangular pupils contracted slightly, and your biological requirements were not specified in the detention protocol. Because we weren't given the opportunity to provide that information, Dr. Patel interjected. I requested medical forms multiple times. I see. Request processing requires. On 9033N, yes, we know. Liz interrupted, patience fraying. Look, Grand Arbiter, we're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for enough food and water to survive until our case is resolved. Null Vex made several notations on the light tablet. I will authorize a nutritional assessment. If deficiencies are verified, adjustments will be made. And when might that assessment take place? Riley asked. The next available specialist can be scheduled in approximately 2 standard cycles. 2 more days? Max exclaimed. We're already at the edge here. Regulations specify that non-emergency procedures must follow standard scheduling protocols, Null Vex explained, seemingly unmoved by the human's outburst. And what qualifies as an emergency? Dr. Patel asked carefully. Cessation of biological functions requiring immediate intervention to prevent permanent damage or death. Liz translated mentally. Someone would have to be actively dying before the Vex'tari would consider it an emergency. Grand Arbiter, she said, struggling to maintain a diplomatic tone, I officially request the return of our ship's supplies, which were confiscated as evidence. They contain medically necessary items custom formulated for human physiology. Evidence cannot be released until case resolution. Null Vex replied. Your request is noted, but cannot be approved under current regulations. After a few more minutes of equally fruitless exchanges, Null Vex departed, leaving the humans alone with their growing hunger and frustration. Well, that was spectacularly unhelpful, Dax said once the door had closed. They're not being deliberately cruel, Riley observed. That's almost worse. They genuinely don't understand why their precious regulations shouldn't take precedence over our basic needs. Understanding won't fill our stomachs, Quinn pointed out. Liz looked around at her crew, the people she was responsible for bringing home safely. Max's usually energetic demeanor had dimmed, his movements sluggish from lack of proper nutrition. Dr. Patel maintained her composure, but the dark circles under her eyes told their own story. Quinn kept massaging his temples, a sign of the headaches that came with dehydration. Dax's military training helped him hide his discomfort, but even he moved with unusual caution, conserving energy. All right, Liz said, lowering her voice despite knowing they were being monitored. I think we've given diplomacy a fair shot. Time for Plan B. We have a Plan B? Max perked up slightly. We're about to make one, Liz replied. Riley, what's the layout of this station? You've been watching through the window. Riley moved to the center of the room where the others could gather close, speaking quietly. It's a standard wheel configuration. We're in the outer ring. The secure storage where our supplies are probably kept would be closer to the hub. I've noticed regular patrol patterns in the corridors visible from our window. What about their systems? Liz asked. Max, you got any red on their tech while they were aboard our ship? Max nodded, some of his usual enthusiasm returning. Their interfaces are all standardized, very rigid programming architecture, just like them. No creativity in their code. There might be exploitable vulnerabilities if we can access a terminal. Dax, Liz turned to her security officer. What's our situation weapons-wise? They took everything that looked remotely like a weapon, Dax replied. But they missed the emergency toolkit in the hidden compartment under my quarters. Standard issue includes some items we could repurpose. Good. Quinn, what about our ship? Any way to regain control remotely? Quinn considered. The desperate measures has redundant systems they wouldn't know to look for. If I can access any terminal with external communications capabilities, I might be able to trigger emergency protocols. Dr. Patel, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. I should point out that in our current physical condition, we're at perhaps 60% of normal capacity. Any plan that involves physical exertion needs to account for that. Liz nodded grimly. Noted. But we're running out of options and time. There's an old saying among long-haul cargo crews. It's not written in any manual, not taught in any academy. It's passed down from captain to captain, crew to crew. The others leaned in closer. Never corner a human ship that's running low on supplies. Liz's expression was deadly serious. It's not just a saying. It's a warning, one the Vex'tari are about to learn the hard way. What exactly are you suggesting, Captain? Riley asked carefully. I'm suggesting, Liz said, a dangerous gleam in her eye, that it's time for Operation Grocery Run. Despite their hunger and fatigue, each crew member straightened slightly, a new determination visible in their postures. I like the sound of that, Max grinned. It won't be easy, Liz warned. We'll need to coordinate perfectly, use every resource and skill we have, and probably bend a few dozen Vex'tari regulations in the process. Only a few dozen. Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow. I was hoping for at least 3 digits. That's the spirit. Liz smiled for the first time in days. Now gather round. Here's what we're going to do. Section 4. The human solution begins. The fundamental problem with the Vex'tari, Max Ortega explained as he pried open an access panel beneath his bunk, is that they think linearly. Step A, then step B, then step C. They absolutely cannot handle it when things happen out of sequence. The crew had gathered in Max's quarters under the pretense of a social visit, the one activity their detention conditions permitted without filing additional forms. The room's surveillance devices had mysteriously developed a static problem shortly after Max accidentally spilled some of the conductive fluid from a light fixture on them. And how does that help us? Quinn asked skeptically. Max grinned as he pulled a collection of small tools from the hidden compartment. Because humans, my friend, are champions of doing 6 things at once, none of them in the expected order. Dr. Patel picked up one of the tools, a medical laser scalpel that had been modified in ways that definitely voided its warranty. How did you even get these past inspection? I didn't, Max replied. Dax did. Special compartment in his prosthetic leg. The Vex'tari scanners registered it as normal component parts. Everyone turned to Dax, who shrugged. Standard Earth military special ops modification. Nothing to write home about. Okay, tools are good, Liz acknowledged. But we need more than hardware. We need a comprehensive plan that accounts for station security, getting to our supplies, and potentially regaining control of our ship. Max spread his hands. That's where my genius comes in. The Vex'tari station systems are like their society, rigid, rule-based, and really bad at handling exceptions. He produced a small device that looked like a cross between a remote control and a cheese grater. This is a frequency disruptor. Usually use it to diagnose engine harmonic issues, but with some modifications. Over the next hour, Max outlined an elaborate plan to create what he called cascading system exceptions throughout the station. By exploiting the predictable patterns of Vex'tari programming, they could trigger a series of non-threatening malfunctions that would overwhelm the station's response protocols. They'll be so busy filing reports about minor system glitches in the correct sequence that they won't have resources to monitor us effectively, Max concluded. Dr. Patel had her own contribution to the plan, from her medical kit, which the Vex'tari had partially returned after she filed Form 9033M7 for a continuation of critical treatment protocols. She had salvaged several compounds that, while harmless individually, could be combined to create effects ranging from smoke to adhesive to mild sedatives. Nothing lethal or permanently harmful, she assured the group, just enough to create confusion and give us advantages where needed. I can synthesize a fast-acting but safe sedative vapor from these components, she explained, displaying several innocuous-looking vials. Applied to ventilation systems near security checkpoints, it will cause drowsiness and delayed reaction times without raising medical alarms. Perfect, Liz nodded. Dax, what's your assessment of their security personnel? Dax, who had been silently examining the station schematics Riley had sketched from memory, looked up. They're disciplined but predictable. Same patrol routes, same timing. No variation. Their response patterns will follow strict protocols. That's their weakness. He pointed to several locations on the sketch. These are choke points where a single distraction could block multiple response paths. And here, he indicated a section near the center hub, is likely where they're storing our supplies, based on station standard layouts. What about weaponry? Liz asked. We don't need weapons, Dax replied confidently, and their security relies on compliance. They're not prepared for creative non-compliance. Quinn, who had been working with a smuggled communication device built from parts of their room's entertainment system, looked up. I've made contact with Spanner. The bot? Riley asked, surprised. How? Maintenance bots operate on separate systems, Quinn explained. The Vex'tari locked down our ship's main computers, but they classified Spanner as non-essential equipment. He's still functional, just contained in a storage bay. Can you get him to help? Liz asked. Quinn nodded. If we can create a distraction that pulls security from the docking bay, I can remotely activate him. He can start the pre-launch sequence on the desperate measures without triggering alarms. As each crew member contributed to the plan, the shape of Operation Grocery Run came into focus. It wasn't just about escaping, it was about reclaiming their supplies, teaching the Vex'tari a lesson, and most importantly, doing it in a way that wouldn't cause serious harm or give the aliens justification for more severe actions. When the details were finalized, Liz gathered her crew in a circle. This won't be easy, she warned them. We're all operating at reduced capacity due to our current situation. The plan requires perfect timing and coordination. If anyone has doubts or concerns, now's the time. The crew exchanged glances, but no one spoke up. All right then, Liz continued. We start at 0800 station time tomorrow, when shift changes provide maximum confusion. Until then, rest as much as possible, stay hydrated with what we have, and mentally prepare. She looked at each crew member in turn, her expression fierce with determination. Remember why we're doing this. It's not just about getting our supplies back. It's about something more fundamental, something the Vex'tari don't understand but are about to learn. Never get between humans and their coffee, Max suggested with a weak smile. Never corner hungry humans, Liz corrected. Throughout history, from ancient Earth to the furthest colonies, one truth remains constant: humans at the edge of deprivation are the most resourceful, most determined, and most dangerous beings in the galaxy. She placed her hand in the center of their circle. One by one, the others placed their hands on top of hers. We are the desperate measures, Liz said quietly, and tomorrow we live up to our name. As they broke their huddle and prepared to return to their separate quarters, Dr. Patel pulled Liz aside. Captain, she said quietly, I should inform you that based on my medical assessment, we have perhaps 48 hours before severe effects of malnutrition begin to manifest. Whatever we do tomorrow needs to succeed. Liz nodded solemnly. It will, Doctor, one way or another. That night, as the artificial lighting of Outpost Vex-12 dimmed to simulate night cycle, 7 humans lay awake in their uncomfortable Vex'tari bunks, reviewing their roles in tomorrow's plan. And somewhere in the secure storage facilities near the station's hub, crates labeled evidence, human vessel, sat untouched, their contents logged, categorized, and filed away according to perfect Vex'tari procedure that was about to meet its match in the form of 7 very hungry, very clever, and very motivated humans. Section 5. Chaos Unleashed. At precisely 0800 station time, Max Ortega accidentally shorted out the environmental controls in the detention block's common area. As alarms began to wail, 2 Vex'tari technicians rushed in, their rectangular pupils dilating in distress at the sight of sparking circuits and billowing smoke. System malfunction. One technician declared, stating the obvious with typical Vex'tari precision: unauthorized tampering with environmental controls. I was just trying to adjust the temperature, Max explained innocently, hands raised in surrender. It's freezing in here for humans. While the technicians focused on the smoking panel, Dr. Patel quietly released one of her special compounds into the ventilation system, a harmless but impressive smoke that quickly filled the corridor outside, triggering secondary alarms. Fire protocol initiated, announced the station's automated system. All personnel proceed to designated response areas. Phase 1 complete. As Vex'tari security converged on the detention block, Riley Thompson collapsed dramatically in the common area, clutching their throat. "Can't breathe," they gasped, with an Oscar-worthy performance that instantly drew the attention of the nearest medical officer. Possible respiratory distress, the Vex'tari medical officer reported into their communication device, requesting Form 6742B for emergency medical transport. "No time for forms," Dr. Patel insisted, leaning over Riley. "This human requires immediate treatment in your medical facility." The conflict between protocol and a potential medical emergency created exactly the kind of procedural exception the crew had been counting on. While the Vex'tari debated the proper response, Dax quietly disabled the locking mechanism on the detention block doors, but having memorized the security code from watching the guards enter it dozens of times, with alarms blaring and confusion mounting, Quinn slipped away from the group, a small communication device concealed in his palm. Finding an unused terminal in the corridor, he connected his makeshift device and began transmitting activation codes to Spanner. Meanwhile, in the main security hub, Grand Arbiter Newell Vex was confronting an unprecedented situation. No fewer than 17 different alarms were sounding simultaneously, each requiring a specific procedural response in a specific order. The prioritization protocols were clear for any 3 concurrent emergencies, but 17? There was no procedure for that. Status report. Newell Vex demanded of the increasingly frantic security officers. Environmental failure in detention block 7, reported 1. Possible fire in corridor 12B, added another. Unauthorized access attempt at docking bay 4, called a third. Storage facility temperature fluctuation exceeding permitted parameters. The list continued, each new alert causing visible distress among the Vex'tari staff, whose society had evolved to handle orderly processes and clear hierarchies of response. Implement emergency protocol sequence, Newell Vex ordered, only to be met with confuse.